for a very long time, I have not interacted with you over a series of these live classes, though this is what I usually look out for. But yes, most of us have interacted through direct messages and through your counseling sessions as well. So, yes, now it's time to get back to the constitution law classes. So, with the topic for in today's class, we are going to cover the topic of Council of Ministers, where essentially we'll be covering Article 52 of the Constitution all over again, read with Articles 74, 75, 77, and 78 of the Constitution. These are the articles that we are going to deal with in great detail in today's class. And we'll also touch upon the ideas of discretionary power of the president, though the agenda is going to be that we are going to take a comparative analysis in tomorrow's class, which would be coupled with the discretionary power of the governor itself. Now, before I start with the concept of today's class, in the last class, we had ended the class over me telling you that in the next class, I will briefly discuss upon the idea of how a US election takes place. So I'll quickly take you through that, and then we'll get on to the topic for today's class, which is going to be Council of Ministers. For those of us who are new, who have just started attending these classes, don't worry. What we are going to discuss in this class is completely going to be separate from what we have been discussing prior, and all of it would be taken for you in a cyclical fashion, right? So just covering and quickly going through that previous doubt of how US presidential elections are conducted. So basically, unlike India, the US presidential election moves on the concept of an electoral college, which is, yes, in India also, the Indian presidential elections work on the system of an electoral college. But in India, so far as the prime form of government is concerned, so far as the prime minister's elections are concerned, so far as the real head of the state's elections are concerned, they follow the first past the post system. So far as US is concerned, it's an year-long process where what happens is that different states, as per their populations, vote for the presidential candidates belonging to either the Republican or the Democratic Party. The Republican here considered to be conservatives, whereas the Democrats are considered to be liberal. So, for instance, the latest president of the US belongs to the Republican Party, while Donald Trump was from the Democrat. Right. So, coming to how this election process works, unlike India, where
Ma'am, Donald Trump is a Republican, right? And Joe Biden is a Democrat, I think.
yes, I think I also confused because it instantly clicked me that Barack Obama was a Democrat. So yes, sorry. Uh, yes, you're right there. Coming back to, yes, you're right. Okay. So coming back to how the presidential system would work. Uh, in terms of the number of states, now in India, we follow the procedure of simple majority. So, for instance, amongst UP, which is divided into several constituencies, there would be, depending upon the maximum or the majority number of votes that have been received by a particular person who has stood for elections, he would be winning the same. But so far as the United States of India is concerned, when it is divided into constituencies, rather what we call them to be as electorates, what happens is that, let's say, one party or one candidate has won, let's assume, 25 votes, but the other candidate has won 27 votes. But here, what will happen is that the party or the candidate who is winning the more number of votes have the rest of the votes slided to him as well, and he would be considered as a clear winner. Right. So this is how the US state presidential elections takes place, and depending upon the a winner in terms of the number of states majority that this individual has found is how the president is finally elected. Usually, unlike India, where there is a separate office or there's a separate election for the vice president of India, here in the United States of America, they usually have a running mate with them. So, president and a vice president are elected simultaneously. In the United States elections, the role of swing states is major. here what happens is that it's basically the swing states or the states with a majority of population deciding as to which party is going to win, and mostly they are the deciding factors so far as the US presidential elections are concerned. So this was the long and short of the US presidential elections. On that note, let's get on to our topic for today. I'm sorry for that minor confusion there, but let's just start with our topic for today, which is the Council of Ministers. Anyone has any doubt so far as this is concerned? Though I would refer or I would recommend that you should definitely watch. There are videos on crash courses. So there is a Khan Academy which has these really nice conceptual videos for crash courses. So you can just YouTube one of these videos, and a concept which is not very relevant for your exam, but you should be generally aware of, that video would give you a very good background of the same, right? Okay. Then Drishti IS
Ma'am,
is.
so I have a doubt. Can I ask?
Mhm.
Ma'am, so when we talk about US and India, ma'am, one major difference in my mind is that India is a union of state, whereas US is like a federation of different states, ma'am, consisting
Yes.
of some 50 or 51 states. I don't know for sure, ma'am. So,
Mhm.
ma'am, there the role of individual states is like obviously given more weightage or priority than in the case of India, ma'am. So,
Yes.
shouldn't the system there be that each state has like one vote, and shouldn't it be decided on the majority of states? So, for example, if 35 states decide in favor of Donald Trump, then he should be made president, irrespective of like the other population matrix. Ma'am, how do you explain this difference?
Okay. So, see, their system, the way you are very right about the fact that India is a union of states, the way the federal mechanism of India is very different from that of the United States of America. The primary reason behind it being that when India came into formation, when we go to the polity or the formative polity of our country, what had happened was that we had a lot of disjunctive states. A lot of states wanted to become a part of Pakistan. A lot of states, a lot of princely states for that matter, wanted to declare their own independence, so on and so forth. So the kind of system that we followed while a federal polity was coming into place was that we had a union had a very tight hand so far as control over the states is concerned, right? So this is so far as Indian polity and the system of federalism is there. But when we talk about the United States of America, they had a history of two civil wars before their concept of federalism came into existence. And their concept of federalism was more of a voluntary union of the states coming together, so far as forming this United States of America as an entity or as a country is concerned. Now, also, if we see, the states have much more independence in comparison to their control of the union, as in case of India. Now, coming to your question of if Donald Trump was if Donald Trump was winning in certain state majorities. Now, if you followed the US election this time, you would realize that the states in which Donald Trump was winning, the first time he won the elections, the only time he actually won the elections, he had a lot of favor from the swing states, which essentially is Florida, Ohio, Philadelphia, etc. But in this election, the number of the states from where he essentially won were the states which had relatively lesser population. So, in terms of majority support, also, we were realizing that he was getting relatively lesser majority in comparison to Joe Biden. It was just that the number of states in which he was winning was relatively more, but the number of votes that the individual was receiving was rather Joe Biden. I hope that answers your doubt. Okay. Now let's start with the concept of Council of Ministers. But before that, I would reiterate something which I have reiterated in all my prior classes also. That whenever we are studying part 5 of the Constitution of India, we always have to study it with or in consonance with its parallel provisions. So, right now, when our focus is more on the system of how the President of India functions, we always have to see if there are any parallel existing provisions so far as the governor of the state, which is a parallel executive authority to the state in the Constitution of India. So I'm just going to reiterate that chart for all of yours convenience. For those who are new, please be marking it alongside in your Bear Act also. And for those who have been attending these classes before, it'll be a quick revision for you. So we have already covered that Article 52 of the Constitution of India, that is, that there shall be a president, is not only to be read with Article 74, which talks about the Council of Ministers, but has to be correspondingly read with Article 153, which says that there shall be a governor. Article 53 defines the executive power of the president, which essentially tells that the president is going to be the head of the state. इससे ज़्यादा कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में प्रेसिडेंट की जो डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर्स हैं या प्रेसिडेंट की जो इंडिपेंडेंट पावर्स हैं या फिर उनकी वो भी जो पावर्स हैं जो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स के साथ डिफाइंड है, वो पूरी तरह से मेंशन नहीं है. बट इसी का एक पैरेलल प्रोविजन है आर्टिकल 154, which talks about the executive power of the governor. Article 4 and 55 talk about the election of the president. This is something that we have taken in detail in once and we'll be taking it up again. But इसका parallel provision है article 155. कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर गवर्नर को इलेक्ट नहीं किया जाता, गवर्नर को अपॉइंट किया जाता है. तो आर्टिकल 155 टॉक्स अबाउट द अपॉइंटमेंट ऑफ द गवर्नर. Article 56 defines the term of office of the president, the corresponding provision being Article 156 of the Constitution, which is term of office of the governor. Talking about the US presidential system, we see that the president of United States of America cannot be elected more than twice. But as such, that restriction has not been given in Article 56 of the Constitution of India. Nothing of that sort, nothing about a reappointment at all has been mentioned under Article 156, that is, with respect to the governor of a state. Is the reason as to why we sort of interpret this liberally, saying that after a certain term's appointment of the governor, a governor may be reappointed. Article 57, of course, talks about the re-election, because we say that the term of president or a president can be re-elected again. So there's a parallel provision in this regard, which is Article 57 of the Constitution. But there is no parallel provision when it comes to the governor of the states. Article 58 talks about the qualification of the President of India, the corresponding provision being Article 157, which talks about the qualifications of the governor. Article 59 talks about conditions of office of the president. Article 158 talks about the conditions of office of the governor. Article 60 talks about the oath and affirmation of the president. Article 159 would talk about the oath and affirmation of the governor. Article 61 talks about impeachment of the president. A governor of a state is removed or works on the pleasure of the president. When we are talking about pleasure of the president, we essentially mean the pleasure of the Council of Ministers. This is something which we'll understand in today's class. But precisely because of that, a governor cannot be impeached, and there is no parallel provision in the Constitution of India with respect to the same. But can a governor be removed? Yes. And when we covered these topics, we did realize that so far as the term impeachment is concerned, it is used only and only with respect to the President of India within the Constitution. The term impeachment, so far as judges of the Supreme Court or the High Court is concerned, is used in the Judicial Inquiries Act. But the Constitution of India uses the term impeachment only and only with respect to the President of India. Moving further, Article 62 tells us about time to hold elections to fill vacancy in case a president is no longer available or is no longer discharging his functions. Article 160 talks about a corresponding provision which tells us about discharge of functions in case of contingencies. In our last to last class, we took up the pardoning powers of the president and the governor in detail, whereas the pardoning powers of the president are covered under Article 72. The pardoning powers of the governor are covered under Article 161. So far as the extent of executive power is concerned, which is going to be our main topic for today's class, it is covered under Article 73 and corresponding provision being Article 162, which talks about the extent of executive power of the governor. Article 74 talks about Council of Ministers to aid and advise the President, corresponding provision being 163, which talks about Council of Ministers to aid and advise the Governor. Article 75 tells us about appointment of Prime Minister and other ministers, corresponding provision being Article 164, that is appointment of Chief Minister and other ministers. Article 76 being Attorney General for India, Article 165 being Attorney General for the state. Article 70, conduct of business of union. Article 166, that is conduct of business of the state. Article 78 tells us about duties of the prime minister. Article 167 tells us about the duties of the chief minister. In today's class, we'll take up Article 73, 74, 77, and 78 in great detail, trying to ensure that after this class, we are very thorough with the concepts that are discussed in these particular sections. Okay, now, so in the last class, we understood the difference between a presidential form of a government and a prime ministerial form of a government. For this class, the only fact that should remain with us is that India is a prime ministerial form of government. We have some snippets of a presidential form of a government, something like a separation of powers, the principle of separation of powers, that ideally a judiciary, an executive, and a legislature should be separate. In spirit, we do follow this system or this provision or this principle of the presidential form of government, along with the principle of checks and balances. That is, that their systems are going to be, their functions are going to be different, and each part or each body is going to have a check and balance over the other party. But largely, we are a parliamentary form of government. This is primarily because India, being a democracy, not just a normal or a simple democracy, but the world's largest democracy for that matter, needed to install the power in its people. So, despite the fact that the President of India is the highest office of the body, till the time it is not a direct representative of the people, real powers cannot be vested in the President of India. This is primarily the reason as to why a lot of powers have been vested in the Council of Ministers, and it has been given a very high constitutional importance within your Constitution of India itself, right? We also saw that this power in the Council of Ministers, or rather the ratio of these powers in the Council of Ministers, was only eventually increased. So this was never the case always. इंडिया जो है, इंडिया की जो पॉलिटी है, वो एक पूरे दौर से गुजरी है प्रेसिडेंशियल इलेक्शन के भी. आप में से कई लोगों ने पॉकेट वीटो का नाम सुना होगा कि अगर एक प्रेसिडेंट चाहे तो वो एक बिल के ऊपर बैठ सकते हैं. ही कैन मेक अ बिल डोरमेंट, ही कैन चूज टू नॉट पास दैट पर्टिकुलर बिल टू टर्न इट इनटू एन एक्ट. बट कैन द प्रेसिडेंट डू इट sparingly, or can the president do it frequently, are some of the questions that have been answered within these articles itself. We saw that post the 42nd constitutional amendment, where of course Indira Gandhi had a very prominent role to play, we saw कि president के पास जो थोड़ी बहुत भी active discretionary powers थी, वो पूरी तरह से खत्म कर दी गई. अब जैसे एक एग्जाम्पल इसका था इमरजेंसी प्रोविजंस को लेकर कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स के द्वारा लिखित में आना चाहिए प्रेसिडेंट को कि एक इमरजेंसी इंपोज की जा सकती है. प्रेसिडेंट सिर्फ तब इमरजेंसी इंपोज कर सकते हैं. और सो फार एज डिसोल्यूशन ऑफ हाउस of the so far as dissolution of house is concerned, now your article 74 very clearly states that the president can remove the prime minister if need be. But then again, the question arises that can he do so with his own discretion, or does the council of ministers have a role to play there itself, or does the majority in the Lok Sabha have a role to play there itself? तो ये एक chronological sequence हम समझेंगे. पहले आर्टिकल 53 और 74 का pre the 42nd amendment and post the 42nd amendment. Here I would request all of you to have your BERAC hard copies and keep seeing कहाँ पर 42nd amendment का एक flowchart आपको एक footnote आपको दिखता है, ताकि आप measure कर पाएं कि पहले क्या language थी और अब क्या language है, right? We start with something as basic as Article 52 of the Constitution, which essentially tells us that which essentially headlines or gives the heading of the President of India. It says that there shall be a President of India. The second article, Article 53, tells us about the executive power of the Union. Here we do see that the term executive power as such has not been defined anywhere in the Constitution. It just tells us that the executive power of the union shall be vested in the president and shall be exercised by him either directly or through the officers subordinate to him in accordance with the constitution. Now, I have a very basic question here. Are the officers subordinate to him in accordance with the constitution? Are council of ministers officers subordinate to the president of India? Anyone has any views at that? यहाँ पर मेंशन किया गया है द प्रेसिडेंट एंड शैल बी एक्सरसाइज्ड बाय हिम द एग्जीक्यूटिव पावर ऑफ द यूनियन शैल बी वेस्टेड इन द प्रेसिडेंट and shall be exercised by him either directly or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with the constitution. This is a very important provision of Article 53, which essentially tells you that the president can exercise his powers directly or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with the constitution of India. बट वी डू सी कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो प्रेसिडेंट की डायरेक्ट पावर्स कहीं मेंशन करती ही नहीं है. पार्डनिंग प्रोविजंस है तो वो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की एडवाइस में है. ऑर्डिनेंस मेकिंग अथॉरिटी है आर्टिकल 123 के अंदर तो वो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की एडवाइस पे है. कोई बिल पास करनी है तो वो साइन करनी है या नहीं करनी ये भी काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स बताएंगे. सो प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया इज एसेंशियली अ टाइटलर हेड एट द एंड ऑफ द डे. ही इज अ सिफर. उनका जो कंट्रोल है उनका जो कमांड है वो एक सर्टन अथॉरिटी के पास है जो डायरेक्टली इलेक्टेड है पीपल के थ्रू. एंड दैट इज व्हाई काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स में रिलेटिवली ज्यादा अथॉरिटी सॉट की गई है in comparison to the president of India as such. In that context, my question is that when the constitution is using this language or through officers subordinate to him in accordance with the constitution, does officers subordinate to him respond to or convey the council of ministers, or are we talking about the executive here when we are talking about officers subordinate to him? And when we are talking about the direct power of the president is when we are essentially discussing the role of the council of ministers. Anyone has any views there?
I think council of ministers are not officers, and yes, the officers are executive like police officers, collector.
Good. So the council of ministers are not officers of the state. They are ministers. They are ministers they're ministers of the legislature. They are a legislative body, right? So यहाँ पर जब आप officers की बात कर रहे हैं who are subordinate to the president, they're essentially the people who are working in the formation of an executive authority. So your civil administration, your police, all these would be officers subordinate to the president, especially when we are talking about the union related orders here. But of course, when we are talking about the exercise of direct power in accordance with the constitution is when we are bringing Article 74 into context. Moving further, Clause 2 of Article 53 says, without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing provision, the supreme command of the defense forces of the Union shall be vested in the President, and the exercise thereof shall be regulated by law. So definitely we know that the President of India is the supreme commander of the defense forces, your army, navy, and air force. The Council of Ministers have no role to play so far as this particular authority or power is concerned. But definitely, even here, the President does not have a direct authority. The President has to, or the functions of the President are directly regulated by the law. So it essentially means that even if a war has to be declared, it would be the Prime Minister who would be deciding with the Chief of the Defense Forces to determine, with the Chief of the Defense Forces, that would be the President, to determine a war or not. But largely, just as a title, as a head, this authority has been given to the President of India.
So I have a question, ma'am.
Yeah.
Sorry for interrupting, ma'am. Ma'am, so when we talk about this entire discussion on the executive powers of president and how he's like utilizing it, ma'am, a question comes to my mind that when all these powers of the president are to be exercised either by the council of ministers or like by the person subordinate to him, ma'am, then what's the utility of creating such a post of president of India in the first place? As you said in the starting of this lecture that we are a parliamentary form of government, and here the council of ministers who are like directly representing the people have the major power. Then why not make the Council of Minister only like directly responsible for taking all these decisions? Why do we need a formal position like president who has no power in the first place?
Okay. So, a quick counter question to you. What is the role of the Queen so far as the British parliamentary system is concerned? But why is it that the Queen is given so much importance? Any ideas?
Ma'am, so I'm not sure about this,
That?
but uh, there was before the signing of the Magna Carta and all this charter, there is like a very elaborate history on this. The Queen or the King was like there was this maxim: the King can do no wrong, and he had wide range of power. After the Magna Carta, it was decided that even these powers of King and Queen like need to be controlled. But the British people still have had this thing in mind that there is a sense of British pride that long live the Queen, and the Queen is like the greatest thing. So they said that the Queen is just a constitutional head. There is no power in the Queen, and that's why England is UK is like not a republic, because the head of the state is like not the Queen is not an elected representative. Therefore, it's just a constitutional monarch, not even a monarch. It's just a constitutional figure, I say, which has no power. It's just a sense of the British Empire's pride, I think. I don't think the Queen has any power, say similar to president.
Right. So that is definitely, Monica, you have something to say? Monica, you raised it.
Kindly correct me if I'm wrong. So I believe that, am I audible, ma'am? So I believe that the powers of president and the fact that the president is merely reduced to being a puppet is the current scenario. Current as in, I believe when the Constituent Assembly made the provisions of the Constitution, then our Constitution was in a very different shape. But then owing to these amendments, wherein if we look at Article 368 of the Constitution, then also it is made mandatory for the president to give his assent to the amendment, which is then approved by the parliament. So these provisions, which have weakened the power of the president, they've been added or they've been amended later on. So I believe when the presidential position was envisioned by the parliament, by the Constituent Assembly and the thinkers, then it was different, but it is the current scenario owing to these amendments.
Okay. So the answer lies somewhere in the middle between both your and Pranav's responses here. The reason as to why there is an office of the President of India is because there has to be an executive. The system of separation of powers tells us that there has to be a division of three bodies: the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. So far as the legislature is concerned, we know that the Prime Minister heads it, right? So far as the executive is concerned, we required one entity or one constitutional body for that matter to head it. So despite the fact that in its effective power, the executive is headed by the Council of Ministers, which is later on headed by the Prime Minister itself, but still when we say that all functions are or all executive decisions are taken in the name of the president, or the conduct of the business takes place in the name of the executive or the president, we essentially are following a principle, we are essentially following the model of separation of powers here, that the executive on the face of it is different from the legislature and the judiciary. That's one reason behind it. The second, yes, Pranav.
Ma'am, so I have an observation here, ma'am. So regarding this separation of power, I think I read this somewhere that in India, the principle of separation of power is standing only on two pillars. That is separation between the legislature and the judiciary. In US, there is a proper separation of the three powers of executive, legislature, and judiciary. But in India, the executive is entirely controlled by the legislature directly or indirectly, ma'am. So we can't say that India has a strict separation of three powers.
Yes, you're right with that. India does not have a strict separation of powers. In fact, if you come to Article 51 of the Constitution, there it says that the executive is segregated from the judiciary, or rather, sorry, I'll just come to Article 51 only to avoid any sort of confusion there. Rather, Article 50 of the Constitution, I'm sorry, 51 talks about Panchsheel. But if you come to Article 50 of the Constitution, it says separation of judiciary from the executive. So the executive can be given judicial functions, which is the case when it comes to the civil administration, that the district magistrate is given magisterial powers as well, apart from administrative functions. But generally, the judiciary has been segregated from the executive within the Constitution of India itself. So this very clear distinction has been made. But the Constitution of India, unlike the Constitution of United States of America, does not provide for this clear distinction between the executive and the legislature. The reason behind it is, as has been provided by you and by me in the first slide itself, where we said that India being a republic democracy, a republican democracy. Here I would like I'd like to take you to the preamble of the Constitution also, which says, "We, the people of India, having solemnly resolved to constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic." So, see, they have not said sovereign, socialist, secular, democracy, and republic. When they're using the word republic, they're using it with the term democratic republic. The essential meaning of this is, when we are talking about republic, it essentially means that the head of the state should be an elected head, which is the case with the president of India, that he is indirectly headed. But we are using the term democratic republic here, that it has to be elected by, or there has to be some power which is vested by the people of India as well. So that is the reason as to why an office of president of India was indeed created. This was because we replicated the model of the British parliamentary system. They had a queen, we had a parallel president. But then, of course, the main power had to be vested in some representative of the people itself. And that is the reason as to why it came down to the Council of Ministers headed by the Prime Minister itself. But then again, the question arose as to what is the role and responsibility of the president. The answer to it lies that before the 42nd constitutional amendment, the provision or the discretionary power of the president were much wider in nature in comparison to what happened after the 42nd constitutional amendment, where so far as powers of the president in terms of declaring an emergency, or exercising a pocket veto, or dissolving the house, और such similar provisions are concerned is there. तो जैसे जब हम आर्टिकल 53 में भी आते हैं, हम देखते हैं, I'll just quickly come to this article. Yes. So when we come to even Article 53 of the Constitution, here it is said that the executive power of the Union shall be vested in the President and shall be exercised by him either directly or through the officers subordinate to him. So it has been mentioned that it shall be exercised by him directly. But let's quickly come to Article 74. Let's read this article with Article 74 of the Constitution, where we see that via a certain amendment, the word may was completely changed with the word shall. So when we drafted this Constitution, when the members of the Constituent Assembly drafted this Constitution, they wanted to give certain discretionary power to the President of India as well. However, after the 42nd Amendment, it was realized that more power should be vested in the representatives of the people, is the reason as to why the word may was completely pulled out from Article 74 and the word shall was added there, making the President of India thereby a complete puppet in the hands of the Council of Ministers. That was not originally the case, as Monica also pointed out. I hope this clarifies some of the doubts.
Yes, ma'am. So that's my point. If the president or the executive is a puppet in the hand of legislature, then there is like only a fictitious differentiation created between executive and legislature. There is no separation of power in the real sense.
Yes. So unlike the United States of America, which very strictly follows the principle of separation of powers, India does not do that. India, when it has mentioned the principle of separation of powers also under Article 50, it has laid a clear distinction between the judiciary and the executive, not even vice versa, and has completely missed out upon the part of separation of powers between the legislative and the executive. There's a very deliberate reason behind it, that we do not strictly follow the principle of separation of powers, as is the case with the principle of federalism also, is the reason as to why our country is called a quasi-federal polity and not a federal constitution in its real sense. So yeah, you're right.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so in this context, we have gone through Article 53 of the Constitution. Let's come to Article 74 of the Constitution now and see as to how the 42nd Amendment sort of changed the entire shape of this particular article. Article 74, which has to be read with Article 163, says Council of Ministers to aid and advise the President. आर्टिकल 53 में हमने देखा एक्सरसाइज ऑफ डायरेक्ट पावर को, पर ये एक्सरसाइज ऑफ डायरेक्ट पावर एक मिसनॉमर है. जैसे मैं कई बार आपको काउंसलिंग कॉल्स में बोलती हूँ कि डीजेएस के अंदर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का ना पूछा जाना मेंस के अंदर एक मिसलीडिंग फैक्ट है जो आपको आपके सिलेबस में दिया गया है. द सेम एनालॉजी अप्लाइज हियर कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स जो है वो प्रेसिडेंट को एड एंड एडवाइस करते हैं. प्रेसिडेंट की एज सच डायरेक्ट अथॉरिटी बहुत ही ज्यादा लिमिटेड है. Article 74 says, there shall be a council of ministers with the prime minister as the head to aid and advise the president. This is where a very important question in your prelims also comes. Where has it been mentioned that the council of ministers is headed by the minister? It is Article 74 of the Constitution. A lot of times students tend to get confused between Article 74 and 75 as to where this particular provision has been mentioned. So the Council of Ministers is headed by the Prime Minister has been mentioned under Article 74 itself. यहाँ पर एक P mark कर लीजिए ताकि आपको revision के लिए help हो. The President who shall in the exercise of his functions act in accordance with such advice. Now let's come to the pre-42nd constitutional amendment provision and let's see how the things changed there. अगर हम pre-42nd constitutional amendment article 53 और 74 को इकट्ठे पढ़ते हैं तो हम देखते हैं that it says that the executive power of the union shall be vested in the president. So it gives a decent amount of authority to the president of India there. Then it says and shall be exercised by him either directly or through the officers subordinate to him. अब इस shall को अगर हम prior to 42nd constitutional amendment के article 74 के may के साथ पढ़े तो हम ये देख that there shall be a council of ministers, यानी कि council of ministers तो एक body है जो constitution की वजह से necessarily form होगी ही होगी. इस काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स को हेड करेंगे प्राइम मिनिस्टर जो कि एड एंड एडवाइस करेंगे प्रेसिडेंट को. अब इस शैल को अगर हम मे से रिप्लेस कर देते हैं who may in the exercise of his functions act in accordance with his advice. When we read the word may, which was the case prior to the 42nd constitutional amendment, we realize that the president still had some discretion on whether he is going to follow the orders of the council of ministers or the prime minister or not. But that वो जो एक आशंका है या एक डाउट है वो पूरी तरह से पुल कर ली गई 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट के बाद, जिसके बाद ये कहा गया कि प्रेसिडेंट को काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की एड एंड एडवाइस को मानना ही पड़ेगा. ही वुड नॉट हैव एनी अदर रिकोर्स एट दैट. यहाँ पर ऑफ कोर्स एक 44th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट भी आई जिसने इस प्रोविजन को और भी ज्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग किया. तो हम देखते हैं कि 42nd कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट जो थी वो ऑफ कोर्स आप देखते हैं कि इंदिरा गांधी के टाइम पर आई, पर 44th कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अमेंडमेंट में जनता गवर्नमेंट का भी काफी प्रभाव जो है वो रिफ्लेक्ट होने लगा था. बट यहाँ पर भी इस चीज को फिर से उभारा गया या इस चीज पे फिर से एम्फसाइज किया गया कि ये जो शैल है ये तो अब शैल ही रहेगा, इसको हम वापस मे में कन्वर्ट नहीं करेंगे, पर हम एक केवियट और डाल देते हैं कि अगर प्रेसिडेंट को लगता है कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की जो एडवाइस है वो पूरी तरह से इंप्लीमेंट नहीं की जा सकती, अगर उनके मन में कोई डाउट आती है, कोई आशंका आती है, तो वो रिकंसिडरेशन के लिए भेज सकते हैं. पर जहां पर ये टर्म शैल आ गया वो वैसे ही इम्पोज किया जाएगा जैसा कि इस आर्टिकल के फर्स्ट क्लॉज में लिखा गया है. तो अब हम अगर इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में वी टेक अ लुक एट द प्रोवाइसो, इट सेज प्रोवाइडेड दैट द प्रेसिडेंट may require the council of ministers to reconsider such advice either generally or otherwise, and the president shall act in accordance with the advice tendered after such reconsideration. So यहाँ पर 44th amendment के through एक inherent check डाल दिया गया. If there's a heading that you have to give to this particular proviso, you can write the word inherent check next to it. It said कि ठीक है अगर प्रेसिडेंट को काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की एडवाइस नहीं लग रही है इम्प्लीमेंट करने के लिए, तो आप एक जनरल रिकंसिडरेशन भेज दो या आप एक लिखित में रिकंसिडरेशन भेज दो। पर अगर ये एडवाइस वापस आती है तो प्रेसिडेंट के पास और कोई चारा नहीं है, उसे ये बात माननी ही पड़ेगी। द प्रेसिडेंट शैल एक्ट इन अकॉर्डेंस विद द एडवाइस टेंडर्ड आफ्टर सच रिकंसिडरेशन। So even the 44th Constitutional Amendment Act understood that it is very important for a unanimity in opinion to ensure that the president is abiding by the advice of the Council of Ministers. Then, of course, the second clause says that the question whether any, and if so, what advice was tendered by the ministers to the president shall not be inquired into any court. यहां से इस सेकेंड क्लॉज से हमें एक बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बात पता चलती है कि प्रेसिडेंट की तो लीगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी हो सकती है। कैसे? कि आर्टिकल 77 से conduct of business of the government action, government of India, that is all executive action would be taken in the name of the president. तो अगर किसी ऐसे एग्जीक्यूटिव एक्शन को चैलेंज किया जाता है तो एसेंशियली एक प्रेसिडेंशियल ऑर्डर को चैलेंज किया जा रहा है। बट क्या काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की कोई लीगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है? Clause 2 tells us that Council of Ministers have no legal responsibility at all. Are we clear with this?
So I'm like bit confused here. So essentially, as per Article 74, what I understood that it's the Council of Minister. If they return the advice, the President is like bound to act on it. So basically, the President can't go contrary to the Council of Minister. But then you are saying as per Article 77, it's not the Council of Minister which is responsible, but the President. Ma'am, so when the decision is of the Council, then why are we like making the President liable?
I am saying in terms of I'm not saying in context of Article 77. I am saying it in context of Article 74 Clause 2, that the advice that is given by the Council of Ministers to the President cannot be questioned in a court of law. When we read Article 77 also, we see that nowhere has the term questioning in the court of law has been mentioned so far as Article 77 is concerned. But we do see that constitutionality of provisions is often challenged. एक एक्ट तब बनती है जब प्रेसिडेंट उस पर अपना एसेंट देते हैं, है ना, पर उसकी कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनैलिटी तो फिर भी चेक की जाती है, तो वो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनैलिटी को टेस्ट किया जा सकता है। आर्टिकल 77 उसका कोरोलरी नहीं है। बट काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स प्रेसिडेंट को क्या एडवाइस दे रहे हैं, क्या आप उसे चैलेंज कर सकते हैं? This clause 2 of 74 says you cannot. तो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स चाहे प्रेसिडेंट को ये एडवाइस दे that declare war on so and so country. If the president goes ahead and sanctions that letter of declaring a war, that cannot be challenged because in their legislative capacity, the Council of Ministers have given an advice to the president to lay a certain order. Are we clear with this? When we are talking about Article 77, that is conduct of business of the government of India, we are purely talking about executive functions. इसको ऐसे समझो जैसे policy functions होते हैं. For instance, when a lockdown took place, right? So imposing a lockdown was entirely a policy function. Now, let's say because of the lockdown, the migrants suffered a lot. The migrant labor suffered a lot. There were people who were below poverty line who suffered due to unemployment. There were a lot of children who could not go to the school, so on and so forth. So can such an advice or can such an order, not an advice, can such an order be challenged in the court of law on the grounds of unconstitutionality, on the grounds of violation of Article 14 and 15? Yes, it can be. But अगर Council of Ministers President को एक advice दे रहे हैं कि आप emergency impose कर दीजिए, financial emergency impose कर दीजिए, या फिर आप एक war declare कर दीजिए, so can that be challenged in the court of law? No. Such decision-making authority of the Council of Ministers cannot be challenged. And that is the reason as to why the Council of Ministers have no legal responsibility, but the President of India has a legal responsibility. Are we clear with this?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, just another question. This is regarding the first part of Article 74. Ma'am, so the word may was substituted by the word shall, ma'am. Ma'am, so here, if we inquire into this power of the parliament to like amend the word may with shall. Ma'am, is this like constitutional? Because if we, as we talked about, at least in the formal sense, there is like separation of power, and as per the Keshwa and the Bharati judgment, separation of power is like basic structure of the constitution. So can we say that here the parliament is encroaching upon the executive or the presidential discretion to follow or not to follow the advice? Is it like a violation of at least the formal principle which is adopted in the Indian constitution of separation of power?
Okay. First of all, India does not follow the strict principle of separation of powers. India follows a diluted principle, right? Secondly, who has the authority to amend the Constitution of India? Is it the executive, the legislature, or the judiciary? It is the legislature. Can the legislature exercise its authority of amending the Constitution? Yes, it can. Has it done so by amending Article 74 of the Constitution? Yes, it has. Has it been interpreted by the judiciary in that sense to understand whether this amendment was constitutional or not? Yes, it has been done in a series of cases. So I was going to come to these cases only, like Ram Javaya Kapoor versus State of Punjab, R.C. Cooper versus Union of India, UNR Rao versus, I'm not sure, it's I call it the UNR Rao case, but it should be UNR Rao versus the Union of India, Shamsher Singh versus State of Punjab. So इन केसेस के अंदर इस फैक्ट को रीट्रिएट किया गया इसी बेसिक ग्रैंड नॉर्म के अकाउंट पे कि अगर पावर जो है वो लोगों के थ्रू वेस्ट की जा रही है तो हाईएस्ट डिसीजन मेकिंग अथॉरिटी भी लोगों के ही डायरेक्ट रिप्रेजेंटेटिव के अंडर ही होनी चाहिए. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि इसे कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनली चैलेंज नहीं किया गया है इस अमेंडमेंट को. It has been challenged and it has been upheld. This constitutional amendment has been upheld, saying that it is very valid so far as this change has been made. तभी आप देख रहे हो कि 42nd और 44th constitutional amendment दो contradictory principles पे खड़ी थी. काफी जो changes 42nd constitutional amendment में किए गए थे वो 44th constitutional amendment ने wipe out कर दिए थे. बट फिर भी ये एक ऐसी अमेंडमेंट थी जिसको रादर असर्टन किया गया, जहां पर रादर एक इनहेरेंट चेक को और डाला गया कि रिकंसिडरेशन के लिए भेजना है तो भेज दो, पर वो नहीं होगा, जो एडवाइस है वो बाइंडिंग ही रहेगी, उसको उसकी बाइंडिंग वैल्यू नहीं करेंगे. Okay. Komal is asking, in this example, if the president declares emergency on the advice of Council of Ministers, and thereafter can president be held liable for declaring an emergency is challenged? An emergency would not be challenged. So, matlab, ek jo, the president cannot be held liable for it. An emergency cannot be challenged, right? It would be a direct mandate of the people that the Lok Sabha would dissolve. But emergency क्यों declare की गई है ये कभी भी चैलेंज नहीं किया गया है, और कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में कोई ऐसा प्रोविजन भी नहीं है जो इमरजेंसी को चैलेंज करने का एक प्रावधान हमें देता है. Okay, I'd be coming to these case laws also, Pranav, so I am sure your doubt will get resolved there. But before that, I'll just come to the other provisions of the Constitution as well. So this was about Article 74. Coming to Article 75, which sort of is an extension of Article 74. So it essentially tells you about the provisions relating to the Council of Ministers. It says other provisions as to the ministers. The Prime Minister shall be appointed by the President, and other ministers shall be appointed by the President on the advice of the Prime Minister. I have a very basic question. Does the term appointment also include the term dismissal? Can we read the word dismissal under the word appointment? इस क्लॉज को, क्लॉज 1 को आप पढ़ो क्लॉज 2 के साथ, which says the ministers shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. अब यहाँ पर तो बहुत ज्यादा कंफ्यूजन आ गई कि प्रेसिडेंट काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की बात माने या काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स प्रेसिडेंट की बात माने, क्योंकि प्रेसिडेंट के पास तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के अंदर ही अथॉरिटी है कि वो जब चाहे अपनी प्लेजर एक्सरसाइज करते हुए काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स को हटा सकते हैं. तो अब यहाँ पर क्या गुगली आई, मतलब when I have said that the president is mandatorily to follow the advice of the council of ministers, then how does the president have the power of removing the ministers at his pleasure? Question 1. Second question, does the term appointed, which says the clause 1 says the prime minister shall be appointed by the president, does the word appointed also include the term removal or dismissal?
No, ma'am, I don't think that the term appointment also means removal or dismissal, but like whenever the prime minister changes, I think he submits his resignation to the president, but that does not imply that the president has the power to remove the prime minister or not. It is on the basis of no confidence motion in the Lok Sabha. So basically, when the majority party or the coalition is removed, then the prime minister is like automatically removed.
गुड सो दैट वाज अ गुड आंसर. यहाँ पर जो क्लॉज 1 है आर्टिकल 75 का, ये इंडिविजुअल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी को हाईलाइट करता है. जैसे हमने देखा कि काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स की इंक्लूडिंग प्राइम मिनिस्टर की कोई लीगल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी नहीं होती. उनकी जो रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है वो डायरेक्टली लोगों की तरफ है. तो अगर वो ऐसा कुछ नहीं कर रहे हैं जो लोगों को खुश नहीं रख पा रहे हैं, simply a no confidence motion would be passed in the Lok Sabha and the Lok Sabha will dissolve. That means that their power would come next to nil there. But when we are talking about that the prime minister shall be appointed by the president, as Pranav very rightly highlighted, कि एक जो appointment letter है या फिर एक जो designation पे उन्हें लाना है वो prime minister करेंगे, no sorry president करेंगे. But then of course there are a lot of conventions involved in the procedure. So for instance लोक सभा में जिस पार्टी की highest majority होगी, प्राइम मिनिस्टर भी वहां से आएंगे. जो लीडर होंगे मेजॉरिटी पार्टी के, इनएविटेबली एज अ मैटर ऑफ अ कन्वेंशन उन्हीं को अपॉइंट किया जाएगा प्राइम मिनिस्टर. तो यहाँ पर ये टर्म जो अपॉइंटेड है, इसे हम कुछ कन्वेंशनल प्रैक्टिसेस के साथ पढ़ते हुए चलते हैं. क्या हम इसमें ये कह सकते हैं कि प्रेसिडेंट की कोई डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर नहीं है? एक बहुत ही माइन्यूट से एरिया में, एक बहुत ही माइन्यूट सी इंटरप्रिटेशन के अंदर प्रेसिडेंट की डिस्क्रिशनरी पावर आती है, जहां पर एक हंग पार्लियामेंट हो जाए या फिर जहां पर एक बहुत ही क्लियर मेजॉरिटी जो है वो नहीं आ रही है, and the government is bound to get collapsed. There, if a coalition government is coming into place, or if it's a general opinion that the house cannot be dissolved, जैसे जब कारगिल वॉर हुई थी तब एक केयर टेकर गवर्नमेंट आई थी पावर के अंदर, तो तब प्राइम मिनिस्टर को किसने इलेक्ट किया था? द प्रेसिडेंट हैड यूज्ड हिज discretionary power to say that right now the Lok Sabha is not getting dissolved because the country is in crisis, because of which the prime minister has to continue until the country is out of a warlike situation. या फिर उससे पहले भी जब हमारी सबसे छोटी गवर्नमेंट जो अटल बिहारी वाजपेयी ने फॉर्म की थी, उस केस में भी पार्लियामेंट को डिसॉल्व इस रीजन की वजह से नहीं किया गया था, राइट? एंड देयर द प्रेसिडेंट हैड एक्सरसाइज्ड his discretionary power. But generally, does this power lie to the president? The answer to it is no. There are conventions which the president has to follow. So a leader of the majority party would be appointed by the president inevitably, unless of course there is a hung parliament. Komal, a hung parliament is when there is no clear majority between the parties. The coalition government have pulled out their support, and the Lok Sabha is on the verge of dissolving. So वहां पर लोकसभा को डिसॉल्व करना है कि नहीं करना, ये प्रेसिडेंट के हाथ में रहता है, और प्रेसिडेंट डिसाइड कर सकते हैं कि क्या कोई प्राइम मिनिस्टर कंटिन्यू करेंगे गवर्नमेंट को या उससे डिसॉल्व कर देंगे, लोकसभा को डिसॉल्व कर देंगे. इन दैट कॉन्टेक्स्ट,
Ma'am, so I have a question here. Ma'am, so this is, am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, you need to be slightly louder though.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, so this is regarding when the elections are over, ma'am. Then I have often observed that the governor has this option to invite which parties or which coalition he thinks, in his opinion, will like form the majority in the state legislature. Ma'am, so here, does the president also has a similar kind of power or choice to invite which party or which coalition so that it can form the government? Ma'am, this question is relevant because I think in the modern politics, when there is post-election alliance, then very often the governor takes the line of the central government, that the central ruling party is often called even in the state to form the government, even though it might not have the majority to prove in the state legislature. So does the president also have the power?
The president does not have a power. It is one of the president's responsibilities that if a coalition government is likely to be formed, then the president would align the interests of the parties in that sense. So yes, if a coalition, if certain parties have come together and they are saying that they would like to form a coalition government with this person being appointed as the prime minister, the president rather has a responsibility under this article itself to sort of give a good conclusion, or give an open-ended conclusion to this formation of a coalition party itself. So yes, it is the president only who appoints a prime minister from such a coalition government itself. Definitely, the president does not have that active a role as that of the governor, because the governor there in that capacity is working as an agent of the union. So definitely his interests would be aligned with the interests of the union government as well. But that is not the case in case of the president. Having said that, if parties have come together and they are saying that they would like to form the coalition government and they have the majority on those lines, it is the president's responsibility to appoint a prime minister as per Article 75 from the same. So from the coalition government itself, right? Okay.
Yes, thank you, ma'am.
So now from the question of appointment and dismissal of the prime minister also, the question arises whether the prime minister, whether the president or the prime minister for that matter can dissolve, not the prime minister, whether the president or the governor can dissolve the Lok Sabha or the state legislative assembly. Now, as mentioned here, that it is the responsibility of the president to be dissolving the Lok Sabha. That means that it's the final order is given by him. But whose prerogative it is? It is the prerogative of the prime minister so far as the Lok Sabha is concerned, and the chief minister so far as the state legislative assembly is concerned. Of course, when the ministry has lost the confidence of the house, then automatically the house would dissolve. But in a case where there is a fractured mandate of both the parties or the majority party house, does it so happen that the president has a prerogative of dissolving the house? There are two mixed opinions on this. So now because we follow the principle of the British parliamentary system, Dicey says that the president has the right to dismiss the ministry. That means that in case when there is no clear majority, the president has a right, it is his prerogative that he should be dissolving the Lok Sabha. Jennings says, it should have been the king here, that king has no right to dismiss the ministry. So dissolution of the house should be a mechanism of the last resort. It says that if the PM is defeated in the house, he can resign without seeking the dissolution, and another alternative appointment can be made from the majority party itself. But it says that the president, rather than focusing upon the solution of dissolving the house, should look for the formation of an alternative government. So this is where the prerogative of the president lies, that if an alternative government, just like you mentioned about the coalition government, similarly here in this case, if an alternative government can be formed, the president, it would be the responsibility of the president to bring that alternative government into place rather than look out for fresh elections. And in this case also, he would not go ahead with dissolving the house. So this is the discretionary power of the president so far as dissolving the house is concerned. Now, so far as appointment of the prime minister is concerned, this term appointment does include the term dismissal of the prime minister. But then dismissal of the prime minister has to be on a constitutional mandate, rather a people's mandate in this case, because the prime minister is nothing but the leader of the majority party. So if the prime minister loses his confidence in the house, he has to resign. Of course, if the president is the one who is giving that authority to the prime minister, it is the president who takes away that authority also, right? So this was with respect to the appointment and the dismissal so far as the prime minister is concerned. When we discuss about the Council of Ministers, we see, when we read clause 2, we see that it says the minister shall hold office during the pleasure of the president. Here, essentially, the term pleasure of the president means the pleasure of the prime minister. So it is the prime minister who decides whether the Council of Ministers would stay or not. And it is entirely the prerogative of the prime minister. But of course, that appointment and removal is made in the name of the president. I hope we are clear with this. Let's quickly come to clause 1b now, which essentially was added via the 44th constitutional, sorry, via the 91st Constitutional Amendment Act. It says a member of either house of the parliament belonging to any political party who is disqualified for being a member of the house under paragraph 2 of the 10th schedule shall be disqualified from being appointed as a minister under clause 1 for a duration of the period commencing from the date of his disqualification till the date on which the term of his office as such member would expire, or where he contests any election to either house of the parliament before the expiry of such period till the date on which he is declared elected, whichever is earlier. Essentially, this is something pertaining to the anti-defection law, for which we'll have a separate lecture itself. So we'll cover it there in detail. But essentially, the major understanding of this section is that if a minister does not pass the test of anti-defection law in the constitution as per the 10th schedule, then he cannot be made a part of the Council of Ministers also. Now let's come to clause 3 of Article 75, which is the most important clause pertaining to Article 75. You can mark a P here because ये question काफी बार आपके prelims exam में आता है. The Council of Ministers shall be collectively responsible to the House of People. This has been mentioned under, this collective responsibility has been mentioned under Article 75 of the Constitution. It essentially says that, again, we realize that the Council of Ministers have no legal responsibility. But does that mean that they have no responsibility at all? That's not the case. They're collectively responsible to the House of People. They enjoy their majority because of this collective responsibility that is coming from House of People. So the House of People can, via a vote of no confidence, decide that these individuals are no longer to hold this collective responsibility. Then clause 4 says, before a minister enters upon his office, the president shall administer to him the oath of office and of secrecy according to the form set out for the purpose in the 3rd schedule. So when we say that the president appoints these officers, that is of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers, it is in light of the responsibility of the president, particularly towards the oath-taking ceremony as well. Clause 5 says, a minister who, for any period of 6 consecutive months, is not a member of either house of the parliament shall, at the expiration of that period, cease to be a minister. Again, a very important fact that you should know about the Constitution. Often a question is asked on this. 6 consecutive months being an important set of information here. So minister who is not a member of either house of the parliament for a period of 6 consecutive months would cease to remain a minister after the expiration of these 6 months. Then, of course, the last clause tells us about the salaries and allowances of the Council of Ministers. They have to be in line with the 2nd schedule. So it essentially says that the salaries and allowances of the ministers be such as the Parliament may from time to time by law determine, and until Parliament so determines shall be specified as per the 2nd schedule. We see that this 2nd schedule is also amended timely, and accordingly these emoluments are revised, right? So this is what Article 75 of the Constitution of India states. I hope there are no doubts still here. Let's quickly finish the other provisions also, so that we are able to finish this topic. So I'm just extending the class a bit longer. Now, Article 77 of the Constitution tells us that all decisions of the Union shall be taken in the name of the President. In this regard, let's take a look at what 77 says. This article has to be read with Article 166. We already saw that the President is the head of the executive. Even if he is a nominal head, even if the real authority of the executive lies in the Council of Ministers, still he is the head of the executive. That is why all the executive action in the government or of the government of India shall be expressed to be taken in the name of the President. So see here, it particularly emphasizes on the fact that all executive action of the government of India shall be expressed to be taken in the name of the President. So it doesn't mean that the President is personally going to be liable. It means that it is a mode of expression that the highest office of the executive is being brought into picture on paper. It says orders and other instruments made and executed in the name of the president shall be authenticated in such manner as may be specified in rules to be made by the president, and the validity of an order or instrument which is so authenticated shall not be called into question on the ground that it is not an order or instrument made or executed by the president. So here again, it's a power of expression that is being used, that any executive order is in the name of the president. However, even if that is not the case, that would not mean that an order can be challenged on the ground that it has not been made on the in the name of the president. So the president has been given authority as to his name in executive actions being used for all important appointments, for all important functionalities as well. तो एक emergency जब की जाती है तो वो ऑर्डर प्रेसिडेंट के नाम से निकाला जाता है, या फिर अगर आप एक सिविल सर्वेंट बनते हैं या फिर आप एग्जीक्यूटिव की कोई पोस्ट ज्वाइन करते हैं तो आपकी अपॉइंटमेंट लेटर जो है वो प्रेसिडेंट के थ्रू आएगी। पर क्या इसका मतलब ये है कि कोई एक्शन जो है लिया गया है इंपॉर्टेंट, उसमें प्रेसिडेंट का नाम नहीं है तो उसको सिर्फ उस बेसिस पे चैलेंज किया जा सकता है? द आंसर टू इट इज इन क्लॉज 2 which says no. It has second implication as well, which essentially tries to highlight that the president cannot be made personally liable for something that has been passed in his name. Finally, clause 3 says that the president shall make rules for the more convenient transaction of the business of Government of India and for the allocation amongst ministers of the said businesses. This provision of making rules also has to be exercised in light of the advice of the Prime Minister and the Council of Ministers. So how the Council of Ministers is going to function, how the cabinet is going to function, how the various committees in the Lok Sabha are going to function, they are essentially decided by either the rules of procedure or the Prime Minister of India. But of course, and the action is taken in the name of the president. Sorry. Okay. Triansh is asking to explain 77 clause 2 in brief. So 77 clause 2 says, orders and other instruments made and executed in the name of the president shall be authenticated in such manner as may be specified in the rules. तो जैसे आपकी जो फॉर इंस्टेंस लोकसभा की जो फॉर्म होती है दे आर एज पर द लोकसभा रूल्स, राज्यसभा की जो कमिटीज फॉर्म होती है या जो जॉइंट कमिटीज फॉर्म होती है दे आर एज पर certain rules or procedures of the parliament, right? So far as the executive functioning of the president is also concerned, there would be different rules under which the president would be given this authority. So for instance, there are civil services rules, which essentially says that the appointment letter of the civil servants would be in the name of the executive or in the name of the president of India. Similarly, there are rules for other executive actions as well. So जितने भी ऐसे orders या instruments हैं जो कहते हैं कि executive authority of the president has to be exercised, वो president के नाम से ली जाएंगी. जैसे आपकी जो acts होती है वो gazette में जब publish होती है, they are in the name of the president of India, to be made by the president. So essentially again a power of expression being utilized that जितने भी high office orders हैं वो president के नाम पे निकाले जाएंगे. And the validity of an order or instrument which is so authenticated shall not be called into question on the ground that it is not an order or instrument made or executed by the president. This has to be read with Article 166 of the Constitution of India. Let's take a quick look at what Article 166 also says, and I'm sure that will help you resolve your doubt with respect to the latter part of this article. Article 166 says conduct of business of the governor of the state. It says all executive action of the government of a state shall be expressed to be taken in the name of the governor. Orders and other instruments made and executed in the name of the governor shall be authenticated in such manner as may be specified in rules to be made by the governor, and the validity of an order or instrument which is so authenticated shall not be called into question on the ground that it is not an order or instrument made or executed by the governor. So let's say there's an executive order of the state which has the implications of the union and hence has been passed by the President of India. Can it be questioned on the ground as to why it is not in the name of the governor but in the name of the president, or vice versa? This article or this clause just clarifies that no. So it's not just this power of expression is not going to be the sole ground of challenging a particular order, provided it falls in lines with the rules under which this order or this order has been released or has been passed. I hope it was you were able to understand now, Shreyansh.
My question is that the many notifications comes in the name of president, but can it be challenged in court? Yes or no? That
no. So
it
just
but
the fact
certain times, yeah, certain times I have seen that the orders made by president are being challenged in Supreme Court.
So see, even acts are coming in the name of the president, right? Any act that is released or any amendment that is released, it is published in the Gazette in the name of the president, that the president is passing this particular act. But can the office of the president be made liable for the body of the act? Can the president be made liable for the unconstitutionality of the act? No. So the office of the president is not made liable. The executive as such is made liable. So it would be, if a constitutionality of a particular action has been challenged, it would be the Union of India versus so and so, or it would be a matter which is challenging the constitutionality of a particular act, but it would not be office of the president which is being challenged. I hope you now understand what this article is saying.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Prashant is saying, shall not be questioned, mentioned in section 77(2). The rationale for the same could be to further affirm that it is the Council of Ministers and not the President who makes such orders. No. So it is not always the Council of Ministers who are making these orders. In your Article 77, it has very well been mentioned as may be specified in rules. So rules may be laying some other procedure also. Here, when we are talking about the authority of the president, we are purely speaking of it in an executive fashion. Council of Ministers, despite the fact that they form a part of the executive, are primarily a legislative body as well. या फिर उनकी जो collective responsibility है वो legislature की तरफ है. तो वहां पर आर्टिकल 74 क्लॉज 2 में या आर्टिकल 74 क्लॉज 2 में जिन टाइप ऑफ मैटर्स की हम बात कर रहे हैं, दे आर लेजिस्लेटिव इन नेचर, राइट? कि फाइनली एक एक्ट है या फिर एक मैटर है जिसके ऊपर कुछ डिस्कशन की गई है एंड फाइनली उसे प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया इम्पोज करेंगे. यहाँ पर जो कॉन्डक्ट ऑफ बिजनेसेस की हम बात कर रहे हैं वो प्योरली एग्जीक्यूटिव मैटर्स है या प्योरली पॉलिसी रिलेटेड मैटर्स है. जैसे अगेन लेटेस्ट एग्जांपल ऑफ इट बीइंग वेदर द लॉकडाउन शुड बी इम्पोज्ड और नॉट, or let's say your Citizenship Amendment Act, or again constitutionality of executive matters per se. बट जहां पर हम ये डिस्कशन कर रहे हैं आर्टिकल 74 के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में, वो हाईलाइट करती है काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स का लेजिस्लेटिव रोल और एग्जीक्यूटिव रोल इतना ज्यादा नहीं. सो उस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में यू हैव टू सी बोथ दीज आर्टिकल्स, रादर द सब्जेक्ट्स ऑफ दीज आर्टिकल्स वेरी डिफरेंटली. इसको सिंपल तरीके से समझना हो तो बस इतना समझो कि ऑर्डर्स एंड अदर इंस्ट्रूमेंट्स मेड एंड एग्जीक्यूटेड इन द नेम ऑफ द प्रेसिडेंट शैल बी ऑथेंटिकेटेड इन सच मैनर एज मे बी स्पेसिफाइड इन रूल्स. सो हियर इट इज नॉट टॉकिंग अबाउट द काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स, इट इज सेइंग जैसा रूल में कहा जाएगा वैसे इसे इंप्लीमेंट किया जाएगा. आई होप वी आर क्लियर नाउ. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's quickly on that note cover Article 78 as well before we quickly go through the case laws. Article 78 is telling us about the duty of the Prime Minister as regard to furnishing information of the President is concerned. So हम ये नहीं कह सकते कि क्योंकि प्रेसिडेंट की सब अथॉरिटीज ले ली गई हैं आर्टिकल 74 में से या आर्टिकल 53 में से भी, हम ये नहीं कह सकते हैं कि प्रेसिडेंट की कोई स्टेटस ही नहीं है, प्रेसिडेंट की कोई वैल्यू ही नहीं है. ऐसा नहीं है. प्रेसिडेंट की एक जो एडवाइजरी रोल है या एक डिप्लोमेटिक रोल है इन टर्म्स ऑफ बिल्डिंग रिलेशंस विद फॉरेन कंट्रीज, या फिर एक डिस्क्रिशनरी रोल सो फार एज डिसोल्यूशन ऑफ द लोकसभा इज आल्सो कंसर्न, उसकी रेलेवेंस अभी भी बहुत ज्यादा है। और वो रेलेवेंस आपकी कहीं ना कहीं रिफ्लेक्ट होती है आर्टिकल 78 के अंदर, जिसको हम पढ़ते हैं आर्टिकल 167 के साथ। Article 78 says, duty of Prime Minister as respects the furnishing of information to the President, etc. So this article shows the constitutional authority that the President of India holds. It says, it shall be the duty of the Prime Minister, A, to communicate to the President all decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the Union and proposals for the legislation. सो एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन ऑफ द अफेयर्स ऑफ द यूनियन, या फिर कोई भी नई एक्ट पास करनी है, कोई भी नया ऑर्डर पास करना है, कुछ भी एक लेजिस्लेटिव डिसीजन अगर लेना है या उसे प्रपोज भी करना है पार्लियामेंट के अंदर, ये पहले प्राइम मिनिस्टर की ड्यूटी रहेगी कि वो प्रेसिडेंट को इन ऑर्डर्स के रिलेशन में अपडेट करते हैं।
मैम, सो आई हैव अ क्वेश्चन हियर. Ma'am, so this clause regarding the president must be communicated all decision of Council of Minister, ma'am. Then what about covert operations like the surgical strike or the Balakot operation?
They all are in line to the President of India. So all these operations, the President of India is taken into confidence, is informed of the same, and then they are moved forward. तो मतलब वो जो कोवर्ट ऑपरेशंस है उनका पार्ट प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया भी बनते हैं, वो प्रेसिडेंट से छुपाए बिना नहीं होती है ये चीजें.
मैम, बट from what I heard from the news report, there was like PM Modi, Ajit Doval, and like 3-4 people only who were aware that such a thing is gonna happen, ma'am. So I don't think that like the president is immediately informed before the action, even though he is the supreme commander of the defense forces. But are like these decisions taken only after consulting the president, or like is the action taken and then the president informed?
See, this is what you have to emphasize here, and that is why in law, reading the language of the Bare Act and knowing it thoroughly becomes very important. आप as a judge भी आप उसको सिर्फ interpret तब कर पाओगे जब आपको वो language बहुत thoroughly पता है. यहाँ पर ये कह रहा है to communicate to the president all decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the union and proposals of legislation. तो इससे हमें एक चीज तो बहुत क्लियरली पता चलती है that so far as proposals of legislations are concerned, NDPS एक्ट आनी है, पोटा आना है, UAPA आना है, कोई भी एक थरो टेररिस्ट एक्ट अगर लानी है तो ये प्रपोजल फॉर लेजिस्लेशन जो है ये प्रेसिडेंट को कॉन्फिडेंस में रखकर ही लिया जाएगा. सेकेंड इज रिलेटिंग टू द एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव अफेयर्स ऑफ द यूनियन. It says that the president has to be communicated of these decisions. It never says that the president has to be consulted of these decisions. So ideally, it is yes that the prime minister has to communicate of these operations as soon as they are put into activation. So yes, it is the responsibility of the prime minister there itself, और ये किया जाता है. अब न्यूज में वो आपको जैसे भी बताया जाए, ये ऑपरेशंस प्रेसिडेंट की इंफॉर्मेशन के बिना नहीं किए जा सकते, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन इसे मैंडेट करता है. दैट्स वन. बट यहाँ पर ये दिया गया है कि प्रेसिडेंट को सिर्फ ये मैटर्स कम्युनिकेट किए जाएंगे, डिसीजन फिर भी प्राइम मिनिस्टर का ही रहेगा, राइट, या काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स का ही रहेगा, बट ये कम्युनिकेशन दी जाएगी. तो उस रिस्पेक्ट में यू हैव टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस पर्टिकुलर आर्टिकल. It is mentioned that Prime Minister doesn't inform him before the surgical strike. So then, of course, you can see that it is a constitutional violation, which the President has mentioned or highlighted in his book. So it was a violation of the Constitution, and that is why probably Pranab Mukherjee has highlighted it as well, right? Because your Article 78 very clearly says that it is the responsibility or it is the duty of the Prime Minister to communicate the same to him. Clause B says to furnish such information relating to the administration of the affairs of the union and the proposals for legislation as the president may call for. So again, if clause 1 has not been abided by, the president has the authority to call for such information or to ask as to why this communication was not made to him. Clause C says, if the president so requires to submit for consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister, but which has not been considered by the council. So एक जो collective responsibility का जो रोल है काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स का, उसको भी अगर फॉलो नहीं किया जा रहा तो प्रेसिडेंट इस चीज को क्वेश्चन कर सकते हैं. सो अगर आपकी ये डाउट है कि किसी मैटर या किसी प्रोविजन को लेकर प्रेसिडेंट को अपडेट नहीं किया गया है, तो क्लॉज बी के थ्रू प्रेसिडेंट उस अपडेशन के लिए पूछ सकते हैं, एंड इट वुड बी द प्राइम मिनिस्टर वुड बी ड्यूटी बाउंड और वुड बी आंसरेबल टू the president for the same, which has been provided under Article 78 of the Constitution. Let's quickly read this with Article 167. I will not take a lot of your time. I understand your dinner is pending. So just give me 5 more minutes and I will conclude this topic. Article 167 says, duties of chief ministers as respect to furnishing of information to the governor, etc. So just like it is the duty of the prime minister, so far as the president is concerned, there is a corresponding duty of the chief minister so far as the governor is concerned. It says it shall be the duty of the chief minister of each state, A, to communicate to the governor of the state all decisions of the Council of Ministers relating to the administration of the affairs of the state and proposals for legislation. B, to furnish such information relating to the administration of the affairs of the state and proposals for legislation as the governor may call for. And C, if the governor so requires, to submit for consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister but which has not been considered by the council. So we see that one of the most effective ways of reading our constitution is to read these provisions side by side, and we do understand that the provision of 78 is almost overlapping with Article 167. It says, so far as 167 clause C is concerned, it says, if the governor so requires to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister, but which has not been considered by the council. So if a matter, if there's a debate whether a matter has to be taken up in the collective responsibility or the independent responsibility of a particular minister who is also part of the Council of Ministers, but the governor so thinks that it should have been taken collectively and not independently, then the governor can intervene in the collective functioning of the Council of Ministers and say that this matter should not have been taken independently by the minister, but needs to be taken or needs to be consulted in a collective role of the Council of Ministers. तो यहाँ पे गवर्नर की and correspondingly president की एक intervening authority रहती है कि वो एक decision को कह सकते हैं कि आप collectively consider कीजिए, ये एक minister की authority में लेने वाला matter नहीं है, right? So this was about 167 clause 3. Now let's quickly go through some of the case laws which talk about the real executive authority of the Council of Ministers, or where rather it has been emphasized upon. Majority of ये जो case laws थे ये ordinance making power से deal करते थे, जिनके ऊपर हमारा एक separate lecture होगा, तो वहां पर हम इसे detail में लेंगे. But ऑलमोस्ट हर केस में यही कहा गया कि जो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स है उनकी अथॉरिटी प्रेसिडेंट की अथॉरिटी के कंपैरिजन में या प्रेसिडेंट की कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल अथॉरिटी के कंपैरिजन में ज्यादा है. द ओनली रीजन भी कि प्रेसिडेंट जो है वो एक सिस्टम, जो प्रेसिडेंट ऑफ इंडिया का जो ऑफिस है, इट इज ऑलमोस्ट सिमिलर टू द क्राउन in the British parliamentary system. That's one. And second, that the real power should be vested in people who are directly elected. So in the case of Ram Javaya Kapoor versus State of Punjab, it was held that the constitution has adopted the British parliamentary system, the executive system. The president is only a formal or a constitutional head of the executive, whereas the real executive power is vested in the ministers and the cabinet. Let me tell you a catch here. In your preliminary examination, a lot of times they would ask you a question, the real executive authority of the state is vested in. Please do not skip upon the word real. ये बहुत common mistake है जो हम सब करते हैं. जहां पर real executive authority mentioned हो, वहां पर आपका answer Council of States, Council of Ministers ही रहेगा. जहां पर real word missing हो, वहां पर आपका answer है Article 53 of the Constitution of India, that is the President.
Is it The Council of Ministers or the Ministers of the Cabinet, because like Cabinet is a subsection within the Council of Ministers.
Yes.
So if we are given this option that real executive authority vests with A, Council of Minister, B, Cabinet of Minister, which one do we choose?
It will still be the Council of Ministers. It won't be the Cabinet, because Council of Ministers is a constitutionally recognized authority. Even though the term Cabinet has been used in your emergency provisions once, that is that an emergency provision has to pass through the Cabinet has been mentioned. But still, so far as this question is concerned, we consider Council of Ministers to be the answer to the same, because Council of Ministers in this respect has been recognized under Article 74. जो कैबिनेट है उसकी वो रिकॉग्निशन कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन में नहीं दी गई, इसलिए हम काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स आंसर देते हैं इसका. राइट? ओके
मैम.
यस
Ma'am, what is the difference between council and cabinet ministers?
I'm quickly coming there. It's there in my slides. I'm just coming there also. So in the case of RC
Sure.
versus Union of India, it was held that president, being the constitutional head, normally acts in all matters, including promulgation of an ordinance on behalf of the Council of Ministers. So basically, in this case also, it was held that ordinance making power, which we'll deal with separately. There also, it primarily comes across as to be an authority of the president itself, but even an ordinance making power has to be exercised in consultation with the Council of Ministers. In the UNR Rao case, the same thing as the Shamsher Singh case was reiterated. It was held, the Ram Jawaya Kapoor case was reiterated. It was said that our constitution is modeled on the British parliamentary system. Article 74, clause 1 is mandatory. That is, the function of the Council of Ministers is a very important role. There has to be a harmonious reading between 74 clause 1 and 75 clause 2, which talks about the pleasure of the president to remove the Council of Ministers is concerned. And further with Article 75 clause 3, that is, the president cannot exercise his executive power without the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers, even after the dissolution of the House. This last line is very important, that even after the dissolution of the House, the council, the president has to function as per the aid and advice of the Council of Ministers. This was held in the UNR Rao case. Finally, the Shamsher Singh case, where it was held that when we are talking about the constitutional satisfaction of the president or the governor, then the satisfaction in a constitutional sense is that of the Council of Ministers and not an individual satisfaction of the president itself. Here it was said that the governor has been given some discretionary authority, but this discretionary authority is not the same as that of the president. This discretionary authority is what we'll consider in our tomorrow's class. As the governor is further under the authority of the union executive, is the reason as to why this discretionary authority has been given. But post the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, the President of India is nothing but a rubber stamp. So this was about the role, the case laws pertaining to the role of Council of Ministers and the President. Let's quickly go through the difference between the Council of Ministers and the Cabinet. The Cabinet is further a subset between the role of the Council of Ministers. So a cabinet वो है जो real decision making authority है ultimately, जो जिन्हें head भी करते हैं president. But क्या cabinet एक constitutional body है? 42nd अमेंडमेंट तक हम ऐसा नहीं कह सकते थे क्योंकि कैबिनेट टर्म कहीं भी मेंशन नहीं था. इट वाज प्योरली समथिंग दैट वाज फंक्शनिंग ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ योर कन्वेंशंस. But post the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act, under Article 352, the emergency provisions were amended, and it was said that it has to be an order in writing of the cabinet to the president for imposing an emergency. But यहाँ पर भी real executive authority के context में जब हम देखते हैं तो cabinet को वो recognition नहीं दी गई है Article 74 में जो Council of Ministers को दी गई है. Council of Ministers is a larger body. As I told you that the cabinet is a subset of the Council of Ministers. Now, Council of Ministers is collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. But does the Council of Ministers meet as a collective body and take decision as a collective body? The answer to it is no. So the core decision making is done by the cabinet. They are the people who are meeting regularly and who are deciding upon particular matters so far as implementing certain things are concerned. अब इन दोनों के बीच में, काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स, कैबिनेट और प्रेसिडेंट के बीच में एक लिंक रहता है, विच इज द प्राइम मिनिस्टर. तो जब हम बोल रहे हैं कि द प्रेसिडेंट हैज टू बी कॉन्स्टेंटली अपडेटेड, it has to be read with Article 78 of the Constitution of India. That is, it is the duty of the Prime Minister to explain or to communicate to the President of the constant functioning of the Council of Ministers, which essentially here means the Cabinet. तो कैबिनेट के अंदर सीनियर मिनिस्टर्स रहेंगे या वेल इन्फॉर्म्ड मिनिस्टर्स रहेंगे, जो कि रेगुलरली मीट करेंगे और इंपॉर्टेंट पॉलिसी डिसीजंस लेंगे, जिनको प्राइम मिनिस्टर कम्युनिकेट करेगा प्रेसिडेंट को. एडमिनिस्ट्रेटिव अफेयर्स जो हैं कंट्री के, वो ज्यादातर कैबिनेट ही डिसाइड करती है. कुछ ऐसी गवर्नमेंट्स रही हैं जिसमें कैबिनेट की भी फर्दर एक शॉर्टर बॉडी बना दी गई है डिसीजन मेकिंग के लिए. ये इंदिरा गांधी के टाइम पे रही थी, जैसे किचन कोटरी भी कहा जाता था, या फिर ये और गवर्नमेंट्स के टाइम पे भी रही है कि कैबिनेट का भी एक छोटा बॉडी बना दिया गया है जो ऐसे पॉलिसी अफेयर्स पे डिसीजंस ले रहे हैं. बट कलेक्टिव रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी किसकी रहती है? वो इस लार्जर बॉडी की ही रहती है, जैसे हम काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स कहते हैं. तो काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स के जो फंक्शंस हैं वो डिटरमिन किए जाते हैं कैबिनेट के थ्रू, बट लार्जली जो एक कलेक्टिव बॉडी के रूप में जो सामने आता है लोकसभा में, वो रहता है काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स. आई होप वी आर क्लियर विद द डिफरेंस बिटवीन कैबिनेट एंड काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स. ओके. Shreyansh, I just received your message to briefly explain 167C. I have already explained. Do you still require an explanation?
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay, I'll come to it. Don't you think there should be some educational barrier to become a minister? So in a presidential form of government, definitely these barriers are there, where experts are hired in so far as executive matters are concerned. But unfortunately, because we are a direct democracy, these educational qualifications have still not become a part of our polity. So अभी तक तो ऐसे educational qualifications नहीं है, and criminal qualifications भी अब तो काफी dilute हो गए हैं. तो it's rather difficult to comment upon that situation. But yes, in evolved democracies like the United States of America, at least these qualifications are put in place. So it's easier to put these qualifications in place in a presidential form of government. Maybe that's one of the loopholes of a representative parliamentary democracy like our country. So you can name it as one of the disadvantages of a parliamentary form of government. Okay. Coming to Article 167, Clause C. Now, those who want to leave can choose to leave, because I'll just explain this article and I will end the class. So for those of you who have other impending targets, you can get on to the same. Now, Article 167 says, duty of the Chief Minister as respects the furnishing of information to the governor, etc. Here, Clause C says, if the governor so requires, to submit for the consideration of the Council of Ministers any matter on which a decision has been taken by a minister, but which has not been considered by the council. अब ऐसे समझो इसको. काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स क्या है? वो मिनिस्टर्स जिनको कुछ पोर्टफोलियोज एलोकेट किए गए हैं. मिनिस्टर्स अपनी इंडिपेंडेंट कैपेसिटी में भी डिसीजंस ले सकते हैं, पॉलिसी डिसीजंस ले सकते हैं. ये मिनिस्टर्स कलेक्टिव, अपनी कलेक्टिव अथॉरिटी में भी, दैट इज काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स के साथ डिस्कशन करते हुए भी कुछ डिसीजंस ले सकते हैं. अब एक मिनिस्टर ने एक इंडिपेंडेंट डिसीजन लिया जो कि उसने काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स के साथ कंसल्टेशन में नहीं लिया, बिकॉज ये उसका पोर्टफोलियो था, तो ये उसके ऊपर इंडिपेंडेंटली एक्ट कर सकता था. बट गवर्नर को ये लगा कि दिस मिनिस्टर शुड नॉट हैव टेकन दिस मैटर इंडिपेंडेंटली, it should have fallen within the purview of a discussion of the Council of Ministers. That is, again, this matter should not have been a part of the independent or individual responsibility of the minister, but the collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers. तो क्या गवर्नर ऐसा एडवाइस कर सकते हैं काउंसिल ऑफ मिनिस्टर्स को? द आंसर टू इट इज yes, and the corresponding provision lies with respect to the president also under Article 78 Clause 3. Abhi samajh aaya? Okay. So this was about the Council of Ministers. In our tomorrow's class, we'll take up the discretionary powers of the governor, and we'll be concluding tomorrow's class with your parallel provisions of discretionary, or rather the non-discretionary powers of the president as well. Right? So I'll be posting your sample question for mains on the class group itself. If you have any doubts, you can be DMing me, or you can be putting up on the WhatsApp group itself.